Coronavirus COVID-19, fact, not fear. Before you dismantle your society, you should see this. A free choice to deconstruct your society is your prerogative. To deconstruct your society out of fear is something else entirely. We put C0V1D-19 into perspective so that you can make a calm and rational decision. We're going to use official sources, typically the World Health Organization, and governmental organization data. From January 1st, 2020 to March 21st, 2020, approximately the COVID-19 scenario to date, 17 million people have died. They just didn't die of a media-focused issue. Overwhelmingly, these deaths were invisible to you. You did not fear them or react badly to them. 11,177 deaths, by contrast, have been presented as a massive crisis and a significant threat to your life. Is that true? Let's look at China, where the disease originated and where the virus has run its course. From thousands of new cases a day, with 3,000 to 4,500 common, it is down to around 100 a day or less. Of the 27,000 people who die every day in China, 100 currently die from coronavirus. Of the 1.386 billion people in China, 3,276 died, confirmed cases, from the coronavirus. In the same period, 2.5 million Chinese died from causes which didn't make the Western news. In the worst hit province, Hubei, with a population of 59 million, 3,085 people died from the virus. In the same period, 86,000 people in the Hubei province died, just not from the virus. 67,794 cases in a population of 59.17 million represents a risk of catching the virus and showing symptoms at 0.11%. 3,085 deaths in a population of 59.17 million represents a risk of dying from the virus at 0.005%. Compare that to ordinary mortality rates in France by age, whose data is most readily available. Risk of dying from non-virus causes at 18, 0.02%, 45, 0.2%, 75, 2%. Overall, 0.92%. In the worst hit province of China, at the healthiest age as an adult, you are 4 times more likely to die from other causes than from the virus. And that disregards that the 0.005% is an overall rate for all ages. The actual risk to young people from the virus were far less than that to old people. China CDC has published the mortality figures by age for confirmed cases of the virus. Age 10 to 39, 0.2% risk of death. 40 plus, 0.4%, 50 plus, 1.3%, 60 plus, 3.6%, 70 plus, 8%, 80 plus, 14.8%. Now factor in that you first have to catch or show symptoms of the virus to be at risk of death. Without a specific age breakdown, we will use the uniform 0.11%, 0.1149% risk of being a confirmed case, 67,000 out of 59 million. Here we show the age, normal mortality, infection risk, death risk, and virus mortality. It shows that normal life is 91 times more dangerous for 18-year-olds, 444 times more dangerous for 45-year-olds, and 218 times more dangerous for 75-year-olds. We're considering Hubei, the worst hit province in China, with 50 to 100 times the cases of the next 4 worst hit provinces. Yet just breathing, being alive, was 91 times more dangerous for an 18-year-old. Being alive was 444 times more dangerous for a 45-year-old, and 218 times more dangerous for a 75-year-old. For the 5 worst hit provinces with 395 million people, there were 73,929 cases and 3,120 deaths. That translates to a risk of infection of 0.019% and a risk of death at 0.0008%. Comparing those to normal mortality by age, we get the following. Normal life in China overall is 526 times more dangerous at age 18, 2,632 times more dangerous at 45, and 1,316 times more dangerous at 75. For a citizen of the 5 worst hit provinces in China, just being alive was between 500 and 2,600 times more dangerous than the coronavirus infection. If the West experiences the virus to match the worst case that China experienced, Hubei, ordinary life will be between 90 and 400 times more dangerous than the virus. Yet I do not see societies willingly deconstructing themselves just because of the high risk of dying in ordinary life. But it will be different. We're far more vulnerable. It's a pandemic. It's spreading exponentially. Look at Italy. Indeed. Let's track the progress of the virus in the rest of the world and compare it to the experience in China. First observation, it doesn't just spread exponentially until it gets everybody and then we all get sick and die. If that's what you're afraid of, be careful who you read and listen to. It increases exponentially, then plateaus, then decreases exponentially, with most, the vast majority of people, developing no or very slight symptoms. Overall, it looks a lot like a log-normal distribution with a long tail. To explain this, it occurred to us to try a very simple model of the virus. A population starts out untouched. These are candidates for the virus. A person touched by the virus becomes either a carrier, no symptoms, or becomes a case, develops symptoms. A small percentage of the cases die. In most people, especially the young, the immune system does its job and they experience slight or no symptoms. We assigned a probability of 90% that a person touched by the virus develops no or slight symptoms and becomes a carrier. 10% of people touched become cases in that scenario. The precise figure doesn't matter. What matters is the spread of the virus. We assigned a factor of 1.25 to the carriers spreading the virus in each iteration. Again, as long as the number is greater than 0, the virus will spread. A simple spreadsheet modeled the spread of the virus until the whole population was touched. For such a simple model, the result was remarkable. As can be seen, the model closely predicted the actual growth and decay of the virus in China. Notice that it is not social distancing which eliminates the disease, but the fact that our immune systems handle it effectively. As more people are touched, the virus finds fewer people who are available to touch, and its effectiveness dissipates naturally. The worst hit province in China, Hubei, experienced only 1 in 872 cases, people showing symptoms, before the virus was exhausted. How many became carriers and how many remained untouched would require an extensive testing program which China may or may not undertake. The point is that China showed a rational and natural progression of the virus, including its early fast growth and its natural exhaustion. We can now track our own progress in many countries with China and its provinces as a reference. The primary resource for these is the World Health Organization and its coronavirus situation reports. We track cases by country or region, mapping them onto a logarithmic scale. The use of logarithmic scales is natural and appropriate for geometric progressions, as found in e.g. finance or here, viral propagation. The use of linear scales, as shown in social media, is misleading and has contributed to the alarm felt. A growth progressing at a constant rate will be seen as a straight line, ascending for positive growth, descending for negative growth, and flat for zero growth. A growth whose rate is diminishing will curl over, with the line becoming less steep until the curve plateaus with no further growth. That applies to the cumulative total charts, which we will be showing. Notice the steep climb at left, decreasing, curling over, until the China curve plateaus. Now, what is the rest of the world doing? These charts have data up to the 23rd March 2020. We've selected a number of representative countries of particular interest perhaps to viewers in the US, UK and Canada, but including a number of others to reflect the global phenomenon. We'll show all countries, which gets a little crowded, then we'll break it down into smaller groups. Data is of 23rd March 2020. Here we see all 15 countries broadly following a similar progress for the virus. Now we'll look at smaller groups. The key points to look for are height to see saturation, how many cases there are compared to China and Hubei. Curlover, curvature. Once the line curls over, the crisis is over. The virus progress is diminishing. Here are some countries less likely to be emotive to viewers in the US and UK. Notice how Iran, Iraq, South Africa and Russia are all curling over. Viral progress is diminishing. Notice how the angle climb at start is similar to China's, indicating a similar rate of progression to China. Iran, green, has experienced greater infection pro rata than China, but less than Hubei. Iraq, yellow, is tapering out below China, and Russia, South Africa and Algeria will likely be at or below China. There are some critically important things to realize from looking at these charts. First, the virus will diminish naturally of its own accord. Second, once the line starts to curl over, flatten, the crisis is over. The virus progress is diminishing. Third, we can determine the rate of progress by the angle gradient of the line and compare that to China. Fourth, we can determine the severity of the saturation by the height of the curve versus China or Hubei. Why it's important to be able to compare to China and Hubei is because there the crisis is over entirely, with very few new cases or deaths. We can therefore estimate cases and deaths by comparison to China's experience. We've introduced these countries first also because Iran, Iraq and Russia have well-developed curves which illustrate that the virus will propagate and diminish in line with China. It isn't mystical, it's simple math. The European selection plus Thailand are interesting for a number of reasons. Italy and Norway show pronounced curlover, indicating that their experience of the virus is diminishing. Though badly hit, Italy will be broadly in line with Hubei, the worst hit province in China. Norway looks to end up slightly better off than Hubei pro rata, but worse than China overall. The UK and Germany are ambiguous. The next two data points, 3 days and 6 days, will be key. Any reduction will not be due to UK lockdown. The virus incubates for 5 to 10 days before symptoms show, apparently. Certainly the next data point will not be due to UK lockdown. If the next UK data point confirms the curlover, then the UK went into lockdown precisely when the crisis had peaked, in which case it would have diminished naturally in line with the rest of the world without the damage of the lockdown. Notice that we have normalized the curves to represent populations of 100 million so that case rates are comparable. Recall that ordinary life was far more threatening to the citizens of Hubei than the virus. Tracking the curves is useful because once you see curlover, you know that the worst is over. If the worst is far less dangerous than ordinary life, as it has proved to be in the worst infected region of the world so far, then it will encourage you to question whether deconstructing your society with all the disruption and harm is entirely necessary. Bear in mind that most of life, illness and death is invisible to you. If the media attempted to highlight all deaths and risks as they're done with coronavirus, they'd be overwhelmed. So would you. It's much more convenient to have a single threat, WND for example. We're also only tracking the cases here to monitor the progression of the virus. For actual threat to life, consider the statistics so far in the worst hit region of China. Ordinary life was far more dangerous. The Americas and Israel are really only getting started. All curves show linear progression similar to China in the early days. The rate seems to be a little lower, so China with strict lockdown still progressed faster than other countries. There is a hint of curlover in all the charts, barring perhaps the US. Israel and the US are worse than China overall, but seem unlikely to be worse than Hubei. Canada will almost certainly break through China overall, but seems unlikely to match Hubei. In Brazil and Mexico, the virus looks to be exhausting itself at far less than even China's experience. It seems strange that the country most focused on isolation is also the only country whose infection rate still seems to be sustained at the initial rate. Or perhaps that isn't strange at all, perhaps delaying the inevitable is just that. Overall, before you engage in measures massively damaging to your livelihoods, your economy and your liberty, consider carefully what we've seen in these charts and in China's experience. The charts show that China's experience is not unique. The data is not false and it's going to be far worse in Europe and the rest of the world. On the contrary, all the curves are broadly in line with the China and Hubei data. If anything, it is the backward countries that the West considers itself superior to that are experiencing mature curves below the China rate. The advanced countries are at the China rate, heading for the Hubei rate. Most important of all, 15 countries all showing broadly similar curves in shape consistent with China, regardless of their lockdown strategy or lack thereof. Put another way, think carefully before you allow your politicians to implement a highly destructive measure to your livelihood, your economy, your liberty. Be responsible. Monitor these figures for yourself. Bear in mind that you can find these figures in the World Health Organization situation reports, though they do not provide graphs currently, only data. It is also worth noting that if you do not use logarithmic scales, it will be difficult if not impossible to interpret the chart accurately. A dramatically escalating curve as shown on social media might actually be diminishing, curl over, but you'll be hard-pressed to recognize that. We've looked at the outcome in China, where ordinary life turned out to be far more of a threat to citizens than the coronavirus. We've looked at the rate of progress of the virus in a number of countries, and seen that curlover is already present in a number of cases, indicating that the virus is being exhausted in those countries. We've noted that the exhaustion of viral effectiveness is a natural consequence of failing to find new hosts as the number of touched increases and the number of untouched decreases. We've highlighted that it's your natural immune system which is massively effective, which results in the exhaustion of the viral propagation. It does not depend on lockdown or deconstructing your society. If you choose to deconstruct your society, do so as a free choice to model something better. Decisions made out of fear and poor analysis tend to be bad decisions. The effectiveness or ineffectiveness of lockdown will be a matter for statisticians to ponder long after the virus is exhausted. For the moment, consider the real damage that is being done to society, to families, to businesses, especially small businesses, and compare that to the reality of the risk as outlined by the World Health Organization data and governmental data on life statistics. Since people on social media are determined to find excuses to ignore common sense and to trust that it could be far worse than these real charts, let us jump ahead to a worst-case scenario. We will ignore the possibility of remaining untouched by the virus or having no symptoms. Everyone will be a victim of the virus. What will the death rate and number be then? Bear in mind that this figure will be 872 times worse than was actually experienced by Hubei, the worst hit region in China. It will also be 5 times worse than the figures from the Diamond Princess, a perfect incubator with air conditioning and a closed and crowded population in close contact with each other. People were citing the Diamond Princess as a reason not to trust the China figures. They were wrong. Look at the 15 countries we chose, typically our home countries or the worst hit in their respective regions, or countries of interest. All 15 countries are showing curves similar to the China-Hubei curves. Next time someone tells you not to trust the data, it will be far worse. Tell them to look at the real data in the real world for every other country but China. If they want to accuse every other country of lying, it will be far worse. Well, China has done us a service by experiencing this and publishing data which appears to be entirely accurate and consistent with other countries' experience. Yet some would rather punish China and shut down their own countries rather than look at the facts. Fair enough. Here is the worst case scenario. 872 times worse than Hubei, 5 times worse than the Diamond Princess in terms of virus saturation. If you can handle this number and reflect rationally on what it means for you and what decisions should be taken on that basis, then it will be a benchmark for the likely far less disturbing consequences of the virus as actually experienced. We've already stated the China CDC figures for mortality by age if diagnosed with the virus. 0.2%, 0.4%, 1.3%, 3.6%, 8% and 14.8%. Now we need an age distribution. How many people are of a particular age in our societies? The UK Office of National Statistics provides us with a demographic for the UK which can be our representative age distribution. Matching the China CDC risk of death if diagnosed to the demographic age of groups, we get a weighted average of 2.4% of the population, or around 1.5 million dead. 1.5 million dead sounds a lot, and it is a lot to an individual who might encounter barely a few dead people in their entire lifetime. However, 550,000 people die every year in the UK, and for the most part we don't notice. Bear in mind also that we're considering everyone got the virus, no exceptions, you all got symptoms, so you're all at risk of dying. Even the Diamond Princess only experienced 20% exposure. In Hubei, it was 1 in 872. We're looking at a deliberately unrealistic worst case. It is truly a doomsday scenario because it ignores the reality that not everyone gets the virus and not everyone gets sick. Yet even in this doomsday scenario represents less than 3 years natural mortality. Do you want to deconstruct society because otherwise we'll go back to 2017? Now consider the saturation at levels of the Diamond Princess, 20% of all people in the UK for example. Now it's not 1.5 million dead but 300,000. That's a little over 6 months of normal mortality. Bear in mind also that Italy and other countries have confirmed that victims have almost entirely been those with pre-existing conditions. To be brutal, people at risk of dying are at risk of dying from the coronavirus if infected. Recall that of course we're all at risk of dying, and that in the worst hit province of China, ordinary life was far more dangerous by a factor of 91 at age 18, 444 at age 45, or 218 age 75. How can ordinary life possibly be more dangerous than the coronavirus? Well, lung disease, cancer, road deaths, gunshot wounds, accidents, war, hunger, suicide, just a few of the possible reasons. Did the media forget to tell you that you're at risk from things other than the coronavirus? Did they forget to tell you that the risk from these other factors is far higher in reality, even for people in the epicenter at ground zero of the virus? Has the media ever told you that 30,000 Chinese have died from cancer? Please be scared. No, it's not newsworthy. Does the media tell you that 30,000 Americans have died from cancer? Please be scared. Maybe, if it's a slow news day. It isn't, of course, 30,000 Americans dying from cancer. It's 599,108. Here's the leading causes of death for Americans. Heart disease, 647,000. Cancer, 599,000. Accidents, 169,000. Respiratory diseases, 160,000. Stroke, 146,000. Alzheimer's, 121,000. Diabetes, 83,000. Flu, pneumonia, 55,000. Nephritis, 50,000. Suicide, 47,000. Source, the American CDC.gov. 3,000 people dying in China in a population of 1.3 billion. It's the boogeyman. It's going to get you. So here's the scaled up and down figures for coronavirus in the US, UK and Canada per Hubei and China. With China population of 1.3 billion and 3,000 deaths, USA population 323 million, that would be 750 deaths. UK 66 million population, that would be 153 deaths, and Canada 36 million population, that would be 84 deaths. Mirroring Hubei with 59 million and 3,000 deaths, USA 323 million, 16,889, UK 66 million, 3,451, Canada 36 million, 1,882. Coronavirus in the US at 16,889 deaths, the Hubei levels, doesn't even make it to the top 10 killers in the US. 1,500 people die every day in Britain, so a Hubei level experience would be about 2.5 days worth of normal deaths. Deaths that you don't even notice, not unless they're in the media or it's someone close to you or known to you. When China has come through the virus with the eyes of the world on it, and the deaths constitute just 2.5 days UK deaths in a country nearly 30 times as large, it seems pertinent to ask if we're overreacting. And that was written before the UK went into a martial law prison regime lockdown with critical and medical journeys only and one session of exercise a day. Nuclear weapons are real, but WMD turned out to be an empty threat which justified a war that is still going on 20 years later. What measures will we demand or tolerate now in our fear that we'll still be living with 20 years from now? If we want to deconstruct or reconstruct our society from free will, informed choice and a desire for change for the better, that is all to the good. That is our choice. If we're deconstructing our society because we've been told to be afraid and we believe the media, then that is something else. The facts are right there, but the media aren't reporting them. That would unscare you. It's up to you to be responsible and do your own fact-finding. Will you deconstruct society for 2.5 days normal deaths that happen to have been a major story in the media? WMD should have been a wake-up call. Just because you're told to be afraid doesn't mean you should be afraid. Be a free and responsible citizen, free while you can be, responsible because you must be. Everything I've highlighted you can fact-check. The World Health Organization situation reports are the primary source, as well as government data sources for population, age, mortality, etc. Should you ignore coronavirus? Of course not. It's even more important now to be properly informed and to research the matter without fear, and to come to balanced and appropriate conclusions of your own. Here's the World Health Organization situation report for 21st March 2020. Look it up. Make sure I'm telling the truth. Here's the figures for Europe. Now try some simple arithmetic. Third column, total deaths, divided by first column, confirmed cases. Here's a simple ready reckoner. Knock off 2 digits, that's 1%. Knock off 1 digit, that's 10%. For Italy, knock off 1 digit, 4702, that would be 10%. Death risk if infected. At 4,032, it's not far off. 4,032 divided by 47,021 is 8.5%. 8.5% of infected people dying is far worse than China. China equals 3261 over 81416 equals 4%. Recall the mortality distribution from China CDC. 8% is the risk they found for 70-year-olds. Are the only Italians with CV-19 pensioners? It gets worse, or better. Check out Germany. 45 out of 18,323. That's 0.25% deaths. Infected Germans are 34 times less likely to die than infected Italians. 0.25% is about the China CDC risk for age 10 to 39. Is no German over the age of 40 getting the virus? Norway, 7 out of 1742. 17 would be 1%, so less than 0.5%. Better than Italy by a factor of 19 or so. It's not difficult to check these numbers, and being properly informed is the best antidote to the fear virus that is being actively pushed right now. That truly is a pandemic. Your immune system is the best defense against the coronavirus. Your brain is the best defense against the fear virus. Use both, trust both, strengthen both. Be informed, go to the source. World Health Organization is excellent. Do your own research, form your own opinion. It's the right and duty of a free and responsible person. You are going to die, that's just life. It's just exceedingly unlikely that coronavirus is the thing that's going to kill you. Thank you for listening or watching. Feel free to get in touch. Andrew at peerlessreads.com or andrew@amather.com. Either should get to me.